We have 4 people on Zoom: Caitlin, Leilani, Matei, and Susan. Apologies if I pronounced anyone's names incorrectly. Let's.
All right, thank you all for coming. We're going to get started because we have plenty of things to talk about, and nobody wants to stay here till all hours. I'm Hetty Campbell. I'm the acting chair of the West 102nd and 103rd Streets Block Association. I've been on the board for many years. I've lived in the neighborhood for many years. I've only become acting chair in September after we lost Cynthia Doty, our former chair. She did such a good job chairing this meeting every year. I feel her shadow.
Should we do a moment of silence?
In a little while, yes.
Okay.
Because I was going to speak about her and our project a little bit in a bit. But that's a good idea. So, Sean O'Brien, our speaker, is here. And rather than hold him up because he's had a pretty heavy day, I'm going to make some very brief introductory remarks and we'll turn the floor over to him. The first thing I'd like to do is introduce our board members who are here tonight, so you know better who we all are. As I said, I'm Hetty Campbell, the acting chair. This is Amy Edelman, who serves with me as newsletter editor. Next to her is Gary Hack, who is our co-treasurer. His partner treasurer is not here with us tonight. She's Kamal Rafi, and she's retiring. We also have Peter Frischel, who has joined our board after being a long-time neighborhood resident, and he has a particular concern with the Park and Streets project. This is Rich Robbins.
On camera.
This is Rich Robbins, who has taken us into the digital age, and I refer to him as our AV squad. We have 2 additional board members who are not here this evening. Mary Testaro-Koss, who runs our Halloween parade, and Herb Alpert, who joined last year because he also had a very passionate interest in the Park to Park Open Streets project. He had a recent injury and is not joining us tonight. And we're sorry that we can't be. Oh, I'm sorry, out in the hallway, checking you in, are 2 board members, Celia Knight and Ginger Leaf. Celia takes our minutes, and Ginger serves as our archivist. She has a very long memory about Block Association doings. She's been here since the beginning.
Hey, we missed you on camera.
Yeah.
Come back.
We need Ginger.
Here's
Here's Ginger. She knows everything there is to know about neighborhood history and is responsible for having gotten an archive of our newsletters into the Bloomingdale Branch Library. That's her area of interest. So, in the wake of the Park to Park Open Streets project, we became aware of something that we thought we were doing pretty well with, but we seem not to have done a good enough job of it. In a little while, I'll tell you all the wonderful things we've done in the past year, but while everybody's fresh and paying attention, I wanted to spotlight the thing that we need to up our game in, and that is neighborhood involvement. We thought we had heard from everybody who wanted to say something about the Open Streets project, and we were wrong. We had not heard from everybody who had something to say. You're all here. You know we exist. You have an interest. You've come. You all know other people in the are not here, who don't necessarily pay attention, who don't necessarily receive our emails, who don't necessarily receive the newsletter and read it when it comes. So what I'd like to ask each of you to do tonight is help us do better in that area and help us spread the word to the people you know so that they know that we want to hear from them. When we publish a newsletter and we ask for input, we really do mean it. We do want to hear from as many voices as possible. And there probably are more and better ways that we can accomplish that, and we're certainly interested in figuring those out. But we've also, in 50 years of Block Association experience, mainly worked by word of mouth and people knowing people and talking to their neighbors and talking to their friends. And I think that's still a very effective way within the neighborhood organization to get the work done. So that concludes my introductory remarks, Neil. And I'd like to introduce Sean Abreu, who will speak to us. He's our new city council member, having adopted us through the redistricting process. It used to be somebody else who we all know and love. Now we have Sean to know and love, and we really appreciate his coming tonight. And the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I am very grateful to be here tonight. This morning, I was actually burying my grandmother passed. So it's been a very rough, last 6 weeks. I buried my first grandmother 6 weeks ago, and today, buried my other grandmother, someone I love very dearly. And I have stories to trace back. I remember when I would come home from school one day, I'm here like, 9, 10 years old, and my grandmother would say, my husband is coming. I would always come home to the stove and ask, where are the pans, Grandma? Where are the pans? I'm hungry. And, those are some of the memories that I remember from her. She always called me her little husband because of how much I wanted food. And, she's someone I'll never forget. And one of my earliest experiences was learning from her how to fight for yourself and how to protect your neighbors. One of the coolest housing experiences ever. She brought me a picture of a dead rat that she held by the tail. And she took it to the judge, and she showed the judge the photo, and the judge ordered that they not only exterminate the apartment, but that they pay for all the furniture. So she got a brand new house. So I've been doing a lot when it comes to rats and trash in the city council. I am the sanitation chair of the committee. So there's a lot there that we want to tackle, from addressing the explosive rat population to making sure we're handling waste management in a way that's effective and that's up to our times, like containerizing our trash, right? We shouldn't be having trash bags out on the street anymore. It's serving as a rat buffet. And so I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I am the son of immigrants from the Dominican Republic. My parents came here at a very early age, where they came here to pursue the American dream, and they sure accomplished that. I was evicted when I was 9 years old from my apartment, and later became a tenant rights attorney, big families in their homes, right? I worked at the New York Legal Assistance Group. I went to Columbia University for undergrad. I went to Tulane Law School in New Orleans, where I had too much fun my first year, I gotta say. But then I came back, and what helped me get through being held back in the 4th grade to graduating from Columbia, right, was the importance of after school program. A lot of the programs are subject to cuts right now by this mayoral administration. That's a big concern for me, right? We're fighting for legal services to make sure that families facing eviction have access to an attorney in housing. And so those are the things that I'm putting front and center in the city council, but of course, making sure that our neighborhoods are. I've heard from a lot of folks in the Upper West Side who have told me that they don't see litter baskets along West End and Riverside Drive. Trust me, I'm calling the Department of Sanitation every day, like saying, hey, where are these bins? Because we need to make sure that we have the sanitation infrastructure. Let me also say, I'm an Upper West Side through and through. My mom has worked at Save Bars for over 25 years. Save Bars has been my mom's landlord. for the last 25 years, is the only reason I was able to move from Washington Heights in the Bronx to the Upper West Side, where I've lived for the past 20 years. My mom is on the 7th and Broadway, and so just seeing that experience and being and living here, attending school at Pierce 165 on 9th Street, it makes me truly one of you. I have a lot to say, but I also want to give you the opportunity to ask me questions. But there's a lot that we're doing in City Council, containerizing our trash. We had a bill that the New York Times covered last week where they called me the evangelist of taking on the war on trash because of my rodent birth control bill that we put in. There's a lot that we're doing to address rats, to address trash, addressing legal services for families facing eviction, and you know, among other things. So that's a little bit about me, some of the things that we're working on. I want to hear from you most important.
So if you have questions, please raise your hands and John will do his best to answer.
Local law has caused just a horrible situation in the radius of about 10 blocks, they say, from north, south, east, west. There is no control by this city over local law 11. When I say that, I mean specifically, a shed goes up, nobody works for 2 or 3 months. Then you see guys working for 2 days, nobody works. I live on 103rd in Weston. We've had a shed up for a couple of years. Local law 11 requires us to do an incredible amount of work. Started out with an $800,000 estimate, is now approaching $4 million. And it's strangling everybody living in that building. And the who's it, buildings? No, the agency that regulates buildings.
The apartment building.
Well, land, okay? The whole top of the building had to be replaced, decorations. Could have been done with fiberglass and other material, which would have the same physical look and have the same longevity. We're forced to all this stuff in terracotta, and then tripling the cost just of the material. But meanwhile, every month that we're waiting, this is over a year,
Cost goes up.
we're paying for the scaffold. We're paying for the roof. There has to be some sort of coordination. The building is gonna have work done. Contractor has to say, it'll take so long. Shed has to be put up 3 weeks before, down 3 weeks after. But the city has got to review the plans and say, no, you can't take 2 years. Put 25 minutes in this building instead of 10 doing the job. So it's done in a reasonable manner. I mean, you walk around here. I mean, I take you to go for a walk when it's raining. I can walk 6 blocks and not get wet.
Yeah, it's the never-ending umbrella, right? I hear you there, and I know that the Ben and Jerry's on 104th at the Regents and VOA, Pharmaceuticals of America, they've had that shit there for nearly 10 years now. So I'm very sensitive to that issue. I'm on a package of bills called Shed the Shed. And a lot of these bills, I like your idea about forcing a certain number of workers.
Information that says, start here, you gotta end it. You can't end by the state, you gotta let us know 90 days and we will approve it or not, or fine you.
So let me respond to that. I agree with you. I think we need to make sure that there's a finite period of time during which these projects get completed. I think that in addition to that, specifying a number of workers that should be working to fulfill that completion with that time period is very important. There's also a lot of buildings that they have to put these sheds up, but they can't afford the facade and local law requirements. And on top of that, that's why we're making sure that we're making available loans with low interest for small buildings. That's what the city is exploring through legislation right now. And I'm on those bills too. We're also looking at drone inspections as well. A lot of the way that we inspect our facades in many ways is outdated. It doesn't always require workers. Drones can actually inspect facades now to the point where it may determine that scaffolding may not be necessary. So we're looking at all these ways to make sure that scaffolding is done on time, that it's not costly, and, you know, to address the concern that you're mentioning. And I wish I had a magic wand to make this be done very quickly and more efficiently, but Shed to Shed is a part of the plan that Mark Levine has put together and sponsored one of the bills that would also establish an accelerated program. An accelerated program is a program that works directly with buildings and tells them you need to do X, Y, Z in order to be compliant with local law 11. A lot of the buildings don't have these programs available to them, and it'll be basically a concentration of resources for buildings to be in compliance. And they'll help them get their plans ready, they help them with hiring contractors, a whole array of things.
But you also have, it's going to be,
Landmarks is a good point. The unintended aspect of landmarks that it makes it a lot more expensive because of the requirements of landmarks, but we need to balance the small homeowners' interest from a pocket expense, but also the interest of landmarks, which is the consistency of the infrastructure. So those are things that we'll look into that. And we also have Milo here from my office. Milo Greenhouse can stand up. So if you make sure to register the questions and bring that back to our legislative team.
I was wondering what you could suggest expedite the request for tree replacement in the tree rows. Right now, it's more than 2 years.
And this for parks,
No, it's for just the local, 102 and West End.
$100.
but if there's a specific tree or a specific part of the neighborhood, I would encourage you to reach out to my office, and then we can reach out to the agency directly, and we'll give you a live update. Why isn't this tree being replaced?
Well, I put in the tree maps and I've done 311, it's up to 2 years, my request is still in.
Okay, that's a concern. And keep doing the 311s because that's something that when we reach out to the agencies, we cite 311 complaint in the identification when we reach out. So send that number along,
Okay,
the complaint over to Milo, and our team will look into it, reach out to the agency and try to get an answer as quick as possible.
okay, yeah.
Laura, tell me the location of the tree.
We have 3 trees at 865,
On the west end side or on the one on the side?
2 and right on the corner of West End and Wild Jill.
And they're dead or they're gone?
They're gone.
All right, I'll go up here and back up. Sure.
A little nervous, I never done this. My name is Maxine Scopa, I'm retired. I'm retired, Maxine Scopa, my husband Mark is sitting here. I'm a retired New York City High School English and History teacher. My husband and I have lived here since August 2020. We moved in during the and, I must say, after spending 6 months or so locked in our homes in the suburbs, I came here and I saw people in the street and I said, this is incredible. Even in the pandemic, I see people. So we're very happy here. I am. Anyway, he misses his garage. The only thing that ever bothered us while we were living here was across the street, that sidewalk. I said, my goodness, this is terrible. And eventually it was repaired and now it's fine. I just have some remarks and don't worry, it's large type and it's spaced well, so I won't take up too much time, but I didn't know the right place in the meeting when I should do this, so I'm gonna get it over. And a lot of this is with all due respect for you, because unfortunately I have not heard the best things about you, Mr. Bridger. And I did meet you in the street one time, and I didn't know who I was speaking with. When Maxine, yeah.
Your remarks have to do with the open street. Absolutely. Sean, is that something that falls within your area?
It falls within my area and it took place before I came into office, before I was in there.
Right, area. It's a long time.
I was just not going to say fine, I was just.
No, that's
Whether
whether
the timing was correct.
Okay. So, it's easier if I read this because otherwise I'll just, go on tangents. We are meeting this evening in a building with a lovely old facade on the new and supposedly improved stretch of West 103rd Street, designated as an open street. As I recently wrote to the candidates for our board, all of whom promoted open streets in glowing terms in our most recent newsletter, and from whom incidentally I received not one reply, this particular open street is a project that, in my opinion, is a filthy and poorly conceived eyesore. We can begin with the enormous, hideous, misshapen, unevenly spaced, pigeon soil hunks of concrete. They look as though they were salvaged from an excavation site or a transplanted meteorite debris. They sit boldly and arrogantly on cracked, fading, grimy, and ludicrously painted pastel-colored semicircles, surrounded by plumbing-like pipes that serve as stanchions, but for what purpose I cannot begin to fathom. As an aside, why do these street circles also appear on corners? They not only take up widely needed parking spaces, another topic for another day, perhaps, but again, they and their stanchions are ugly and serve no aesthetic or practical application. And last but certainly not least, let's not forget the monstrous, poorly placed, and ill-attended planters. Now let's talk about the designated purposes or perceived advantages of this horrendously designed open street, which has been imposed for our neighbors. First, when have any of you ever seen children playing on the street anywhere in our neighborhood?
Never.
Never.
Right. Second, last summer I walked on the street when this street was closed for a neighborhood event. There was a so-called performance in progress, consisting of a young guitar player, a dozen or so folding chairs, with maybe 3 or 4 people listening. Third, there was a bridge table near the corner where a couple of kids appeared to be doing some sort of art. Fourth, I saw no gathering of neighbors, such as was put forth as an argument in favor of designating this an open street. Fifth, as for shopping, as one candidate mentioned in our newsletter, what shopping? Where? And sixth, perhaps most importantly, as far as safe driving is concerned, speed bumps would have served the purpose much better than the distracting obstacle course that has now just created. Closing the street to traffic for an occasional party or event is perfectly fine, even desirable, and provides some welcome relief from the mundane routine of city life, much as our street fairs along Broadway do. But this is hardly a valid reason to permanently scar an otherwise normal local street with oversized, unattractive, and obstructive objects in the name of any sort of improvement and or safety. The blocks and planters halfway out into the gutters pose a dangerous detour to both pedestrians and drivers, and I would guess are likely offensive to many residents of this street. I wonder whether they were even consulted. Finally, what fantasy world of the masterminds and their local cohorts, including Mr. Michelle, living
We shouldn't be personal here.
with
no question.
What's the
I'm not, okay, please, just continue. With all due respect, no outrageous interfering embellishments exist on the street in front of Mr. Frizzell's townhouse. Furthermore, I can all but guarantee that none of the, furthermore, no. I'm just speaking, I don't have to answer the question, I can speak my mind. Laura,
How long?
That's not.
for another paragraph, okay? Don't worry, we'll get out of here in time.
Laura,
Furthermore,
please stand by.
I can all but guarantee that none of the individuals who approve this mess live on this block either. And that goes for the candidates who now wish to represent us. The politics and influence that were involved in this indignity are shameful. I ended. Please consider fighting to have this ordinary street restored to its previous condition in line with your neighboring streets. Make repairs where necessary, as was done, the uneven, broken, and dangerous sidewalk directly across the street from here. But don't make cheap attempts to impose outside changes to locations based on the perceived needs and requirements of others. I find it highly patronizing and deeply offensive. Thank you for your
Hang on. We'd like to keep our meeting on track as a courtesy to Maxine, because I thought she was asking a direct question to member Brady. I let her know that. So her question is, what can we do about that? And yet, before you answer, I want to respond from the Block Association perspective, so you have more information. In the history, the evolution of how it came to be, and we can have further discussions of this at another time. We have a pretty full agenda for this meeting and devoting significant time to that particular project. It was not on. That doesn't mean we can't do that at another time. We certainly, as a Block Association, will continue to try to find a balance that will, who wasn't heard, who is on our board, but is here tonight, reminded me of the definition of compromise, where everybody goes away unhappy. We would like to find a meeting.
I'm sorry, but we were supposed to get, this is my first meeting, we were supposed to get an agenda in advance. I assumed we would be discussing open streets since so much of the news item was devoted.
Right, our monthly meeting, Open Streets, is always on the agenda.
Well,
And that agenda is posted at our website in advance of the monthly meeting. This is a special meeting that has a different sort of agenda. Did we post that on the website? Does anybody recall? I'm not sure that we did. The important thing that you need to know is that the reason why it does not, the Open Streets project does not extend down to Riverside is not that it wasn't intended to. Last summer, there was a mediation meeting that the former chair, Cynthia Doty, on behalf of the Block Association, organized. And there were representatives of the Department of Transportation and representatives in favor of open streets and representatives anti-open streets. And it was a very long, drawn-out meeting, rather divisive. The video of it is available at our website if you'd like to watch it. As a result of that meeting, as a means of a compromise to acknowledge the people who were so anti the project, it was shortened so that it only included 2 of the 3 proposed blocks, not all 3. So it's not any agenda why it wasn't included down there, because, you know, everybody knows it's inconvenient. It wasn't included down there as a nod toward, okay, everybody doesn't love this, so let's just do 2 blocks, not 3.
I like the second one Katie said. First of all, this predated me representing you, just so you know. Want to put that out there. And second of all, this is a Department of Transportation decision, not a council decision, regardless of who represents you. 3, I do have first-hand knowledge that DOT, I know there's a conspiracy out there that it wasn't included from Riverside to West End because a certain person lives on that block. That's not true at all. I'm telling you right now, the reason it's not included was because of that conversation that Cynthia Doty had last. And Cynthia Doty said, we have to find a middle ground here, and she was determined to make it a middle ground. And what DOT took back was like, fine, we just won't touch the last one. So there's nothing, again, there's no way to, it's either nothing happens and the people who want to get upset, or either the people who want it in its entire form get it, and then the other side is upset. So there's almost like no real winning here, and that's why a compromise was the best thing that was able to happen.
What the people on this block, I don't want this block, but the people on this block who spoke at all, these residents, they didn't come to a meeting, they may not have known. For 2 years, the block association publicized the proposal for the project in the newsletter. We funded a survey that was included in the newsletter. We
You didn't
posted,
vote on trees and,
no, that's illegal, we're not allowed
well,
to.
that's usually how it's been done in this neighborhood for years now.
Not in the past 10 years. And if you don't mind, I'd prefer not to be interrupted.
Well,
Raise your hand.
that was the question I had for you.
Right, there was a long process, and my opening remarks were that the Block Association thought that it had done a pretty comprehensive job. It was publicized in the newsletter a number of times. We held meetings that everybody was made aware of, either through the newsletter, on our email list, which not everybody has signed up for, but everybody is aware that we have an email list and you can sign up for it. We have posted flyers in building lobbies at our website where all of the plans, because we, the Block Association, wanted to know how the community felt about it. That was paramount. Based on the responses to that, the Block Association, it seemed to suggest that by and large, the community was in favor of it.
Did you look at the measures to see where most of the responses came?
The responses were the survey was only delivered in the newsletter. That's how it was distributed. So the responses, and they were coded and numbered, not so that we would know who, because anonymity was an option, but we would know that those numbers matched up what we had distributed. A lot of time, a lot of care, a lot of money, a lot of effort was put toward trying to figure out what the community wanted. And that's why I started this meeting by saying it became clear in the months after the project was approved, which again, it was not a Block Association project. It was a project proposed by people in the neighborhood who thought it would be a good idea. And then ultimately we were asked if we would endorse it.
Did you endorse those blocks?
No, that was not the decision that the Block Association. But you're not interrupt, please. I know you're upset. We have spent years sitting through meetings, listening to upset people. And we are sensitive to that, and we want to know about it. But the conversation has to be conducted civilly. Anyway, it is a conversation that will continue because when the Open Streets project was implemented, it was explained to us that no measures that were being implemented were permanent. Paint on the pavement can be painted over. Boulders can be removed. Planters can be adjusted and rearranged. But it has to be a process where we hear from the neighborhood. We're glad to hear from you, but it has to be done in appropriate forums and through a process. And in answer to your statement about posters, the Block Association has been fined for putting up posters on street lamps. And that's why we don't do that anymore. And that was 10, 15 years ago, when every time you walk down the street, it was painters, it was contractors, it was babysitters, and the city said, no, you can't do that. So we stopped doing it. So instead, we communicate with the residents through the quarterly newsletter, which every single apartment in the neighborhood gets, through an email list that everybody can sign up for, through flyers that get posted in every building that has a bulletin board. So if you don't know about something, I don't know how much more we can do about this. If you have ideas, constructive ideas, I would like to hear them.
Should I just make a quick point? It also went before Community Board 7, and they adequately noticed it as they're required to do, before the CV7 meeting.
Yeah. So Sean, if you would like to take another question or two, please.
Regarding Cynthia Doty, I want to say that we are passing legislation in June to do a street renaming after her. And I want you to hear this, the first time I've reported it, we're gonna work with your block association to make that a reality, okay? And we'll work with the family and with 3 parks and, you know, all these stakeholders to make that possible.
Thank you for coming. Thank you to the Block Association. I actually have a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. They're not the open streets, but I will just say that I found the remarks by Maxine filled with errors and misunderstandings. And I think that there certainly is more communication to be done, for example, about the calming process, which is what the corners are about, which is very, very low. I am in favor of what was done. I think it could be more aesthetically pleasing, and I think there's certainly more that could be done on the current design that would address some of the aesthetic concerns. I did want to also though shift gears to a couple of other neighborhood things. One is to ask that you would consider bringing forward the Small Business Job Survival Act, which has been languishing in the city council. We are still suffering from too many empty storefronts, some of them literally 20 years empty, because they're being warehoused by landlords. That act, which is a kind of rent control or rent stabilization for commercial spaces, is direly needed throughout the city. But I think the Upper West Side is particularly it. So please put that on your agenda. I think it's a good bill in the city council. It is not, Gail Brewer blocked it, frankly. And I usually like Gail Brewer, but she wasn't good on this. I also want to bring to your attention my concern about stores and restaurants that do not accept cash, which is illegal in New York City, but it is not enforced. And it should be enforced.
If there's a specific store, you can
One, there was a,
send an email to my probably,
I'm sorry?
Milo and my staff. You can send an email with specific stores, and we're happy to turn it over to DCWP, Department of Consumer Protection. They're the agency that likely enforces this, if not SBS.
It's been acknowledged that it's not.
Okay, well, then we can push for that, because I think, that's to discriminate especially on people who don't have access to credit cards. And
That's right, exactly right. I think it's a question.
Okay, we'll bring that back.
Thank you very much.
Good question. You keep saying send an email to your office, but I've sent a lot of emails and there's an immediate out of office reply and then I don't hear anything.
Okay, so just so, all right, we'll make sure that we correct that and we get back to you. The reason why we have the automatic reply is that we have 175.
I don't mind the reply.
Okay, we will have to get back to you.
I got them once.
Okay, what's your
Replied
name?
Once.
What's your name?
I was filling out a higher version.
How do you spell your name? I'll make sure my team is on already.
My office.
No, what's your name?
IRAGERSHEN.
What's your last name?
Version ones. And all.
Okay.
HR.
Yeah, it's all phonetic.
And if you don't mind me asking, when you follow up, what do you want, what was the concern about?
Well, the most recent concern was I would like you to support the DOT pilot on, they call them race crosswalks. But the city of Kitchener in Canada calls them continuous sidewalks. And they're good because you get automatic ADA compliance, they elevate pedestrians, they perform traffic calming, you prevent flooding. So someone pushing a stroller does not have to go up and down. My father was at the Jewish home, and I had to take him out in his wheelchair. And every time we hit a curb cut, the whole routine was turn around so he doesn't go down on his face, and then go backwards, push him across the street, turn around again, go up the other side. Okay, crazy. Continuous sidewalks. That's the answer.
So we'll do
And also slow the bicycles coming down cross streets. People are very scared about when they can buy a bicycle.
And is there a specific place you would like to see this, any certain blocks?
Both sides of Broadway would be good in general. I know I was on a CB9 committee meeting, a Parks committee meeting, and they were saying somewhere at 145th Street, there was a problem with flooding, and continuous sidewalks would prevent flooding.
Okay.
Because flooding always occurs where you want to walk. there's guaranteed, when there's a lot of rain, the catch basin will be fog, and snow plows catch, but this thing's been snowing in the road.
But so I've just learned about this issue, never read about it, we'll do
Yeah.
research and we'll make sure we get you a written response.
DOT has a pilot, raised crosswalk, but the terminology is not good.
Yeah, all right, well, we'll get you a response on this issue.
Oh, and the trash management is a super inspiration. Because on 104th Street right here, the school, PS 145, is dumping trash on 104th Street, I don't know why, but they did, and the rats would go this way. And
That's a passion area of ours. Material drawing.
I see the installations on 143rd.
Have you been there?
Oh, yeah.
You like it?
Amazing. Oh,
They're
yeah.
coming down.
Yes. Fabulous.
I think the pilot is expanding in the spring from 110 to 155th,
Yeah.
and then Manhattan wide in the later years.
Oh, they're small.
So we'll get you a response. Sorry to get back to you. That's, sometimes emails fall through the cracks, but we'll get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
And Milo, please speak to him before you leave. Thank you. Sorry, you already asked a question? That's what folks in the back. I'll be back in the door.
You can go.
Is there a question about safety on this block with the borders? They are against the DOT's own regulation that no permanent structure should be installed there. And they also require 50-foot passage for emergency vehicles. And with the borders, it seems that we are at 10 feet and not 15.
I've registered the complaints on open streets. Thank you.
What should I do on the city?
Well, that is one in favor of static programs in a narrow street. So this is a narrow street. Now we have permanent goals, and it's a question about safety.
I'll reach out to emergency departments to see if they have any issues with getting through.
All right.
And, that's the least we could do. If they report that there are no issues, we'll report that back to you. But I'm pretty sure DOT consulted, emergency providers, like, I'm sure they spoke to FDNY, the police department, but we'll get answers to that. Next.
You brought up about the scaffolding. In particular, there's scaffolding by the Ben and Jerry's and the
104th.
McDonald's.
Yep.
And if I go by in the afternoon, I'm high as a kite. Is anybody really following up and saying, why is this thing up 10 years? Why is this thing up? Or they're over empty storefronts? It really is a thing.
You wouldn't
And
believe
it's
this,
unsafe.
but just last week, the mayor had a town hall in West Harlem, and I was there with the DOB commissioner, Jimmy Otto, and I said, you would make me mayor if I get this scaffold down on 104th Street. And he said, well, let's talk. And so I'm in the process of really working, having those conversations. But it seems like everyone has taken a stab at it and failed. Let's figure out why it is.
Well, somebody needs to review.
And it's city property too, so it's like, why isn't the city
But I
doing
used
this?
to work for the city about 100 years ago, and it is like you said, there's a lot of communication between
Yeah.
these offices. I mean, if you just go back in the records, all of the building, say it's been up for 10 years, who's the landlord? Why is it still up?
Yeah.
Really very simple in this digital age.
Well, look, I want to be mayor, and I'm kidding. I'm gonna make sure that we take a close look at this. And I know that it will make a lot of people in this neighborhood very happy. And it's also the right thing. We know that the sheds are inviting to illicit activities. It's impacting our view of the skyline, right?
Other than that, garbage, it's dangerous. The Volunteers of America have kids coming in and out of that building.
Yeah,
You really want them to walk to the corner and get inundated with all these guys smoking weed?
yeah. And also the illegal pot shops are also top of mind. I know we're trying to close Sasa Waza, but that's only one place in the Upper West Side. I think that from 96 to 110, there's at least 18 pot shops. And we do need the authority from Albany to say to the city, you have the authority to close down these shops, we can padlock them and close them down for good. Right now, for whatever reason, that's not happening, but I hope that Albany includes it in the budget. The budget is still not in fine print in Albany, it's still getting worked on. I hope that there's still wiggle room there for that bill to be added to the budget. But that would make it a lot easier for us. And, you know, just yesterday, had conversation with the city authority. You know, they keep putting the blame on the sheriffs, they're small in capacity, there's only so few of them. And so and I'm like, why don't the NYPD do it? You have thousands and thousands of officers, so I think the capacity is there. It's just figuring out what are the regulatory limitations here on what's preventing us from closing it down in the first place. If it were for the city, if we could do this, promise you, Gail and I would be closing them ourselves, okay? So it's something that's very top of mind. And I know I'm bringing this up to you unprompted, but it's also because I know the boss that cares about it.
Excuse me, Sean, or would you or Milo please announce the email address so we have it in the report?
Yes, my email.
The email that people should use to contact you.
Well, there's the District 7 email that my staff reviews. If you email me, I send it to them. So I think the District 7 email is probably the best. Is District 7?
There's 0? District 07 or just?
No, it's
Just 7. District 7, he's had some experience. I promise we'll get you those replies. District 7 at council.nyc.gov.
I think
Okay?
Gail says a 0, which is what I asked. I've seen one.
Mine was just District 7, right? Yeah, just District. All right, I think I have to take one more question. And I'll take.
Thank you. And this is a general administrative question, and I've had the chance to meet you a few times. We also really appreciate that you're coming out here, especially on a very difficult day. It's not a criticism of you, but of the system. I have a concern that our area is becoming what I consider a zombie district, where we don't have, like, and I served on CD7 for a long time, and I saw things work really well when everything's aligned. When CD7, the city council, the state assembly, the state senate, the precinct, the school district are all represented for a large area by the same people. We're now being redistricted, are represented by you, and very little of your territories in CD7, very little of your territories in the 24th precinct. And the same with other elected officials. We kind of have a hodgepodge of just being on the edge of a lot of districts, which makes me worry that we'll be forgotten. And like for you, going to CD7 probably would be less of a priority because it's a small part of your constituency. And you know, the West Side Rag is a great publication, but you know, they cover the part of what
Your daughter writes the Rag, right?
I didn't mention that, but yes. So they mostly cover 59th Street to 110th Street. They're expanding a bit north, but I'm worried that you know, we have the danger of becoming forgotten because we're not in the heart of a neighborhood, but rather in the outskirts.
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying you will not be forgotten. But I understand where the frustration is coming from. You were previously under Councilmember Viverito. So you had an East Harlem person representing the Upper West Side. You had Gail, a great representative of the Upper West Side, and now you have me, right? Just so you know, even politically speaking, the most highest turnout is the Upper West Side person. So it's like 65% of my district is from down here. Folks, so politically speaking, it's something that we must pay attention to anyway. But forget about the politics. I care about the Upper West Side. I live in the Upper West Side.
Plus, we know where your number works.
And you know, my mom works at Zabar's. You know, I went to school on 109th Street, PSO 65. I worked in the New York Public Library in high school on 113th Street throughout my high school years. I went to Columbia for undergrad. I've taken the one train my entire life. I've taken the 4 bus my entire life. I care about the Upper West Side. And for me to say that I'm a part of the Upper West Side, it brings me so much gratitude and satisfaction. So I understand where the frustration is coming from.
It's not even frustration, it's just concern. Making
It's a
sure-
legitimate concern, right?
Yeah,
It's a legitimate
just that
concern.
there's alignment of elected officials with neighborhood services when it's not like one group, cohesive group that's representing our community. It's a lot of various ones that don't have overlapping districts.
Yeah, and I have to say, I represent the Upper West Side, the other side of Broadway, right? And I'm very present there. And now that West of Broadway is now part of my district, I'm very present here, and that's why I'm here. And I understand how the districts are overlapping and it sort of creates disincentive within the system to not be present. But regardless of how districts are overlapped, just know that I'm gonna be here and I'm gonna serve this community to the best of my ability. Thank you guys for having me tonight. I'll make sure to come back every time you need.
And we know where your mother worked.
We're gonna make no response. Can you guys just have a second to speak to Milo? And he's in the back. Yeah.
Before Sean goes, I'm going to ask a question. I want to do that while he's still here so we can see what the answer is. I'll wait till he's done having that conversation he's having. Obviously, the topic of open streets is still very much on the mind of the community. For those of you who are still here, I know some people have already left. Don't want to know what you're pro, don't want to know what you're con. I want to know if you would be interested in additional meetings. Sean, I just want you to see the show of hands that we're about to have. I would like to see a show of hands if you would be interested in continuing to participate in meetings that have to do with resolving open streets more successfully. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, raise a line, please, 8, 9, 10, 13, okay, so approximately half of those of you. Thank you.
All right, good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along. Here in review. For the first time, because Cynthia usually did this job, and when it wasn't Cynthia, it was Sharon. The first time I had to sit down and figure out what was I going to talk about in the year in review. I went back through the last year worth of newsletters. I used my memory. I listened and made some additions this evening. And it really took me aback to see what this organization has accomplished in the past year. We're a bunch of volunteers who have lives and day jobs and families and other things we have to worry about. And nonetheless, at last year's annual meeting, we learned about all of the improvements in Riverside Park that have been made and were scheduled to be made. We inducted 2 more people into our 50-year Hall of Fame. We elected 3 new members of the board of directors, 2 of whom have chosen to run for re-election, which means to me we're not a bad group to hang out. Herb Alter is not here this evening, but I'd like to thank him for his year of service. And I'd like to thank both Rich and Gary, our newest board members, for agreeing to run for election again. We published 4 newsletters. Those newsletters let everybody in the neighborhood know about our activities. They've supported other local organizations such as BAIP, the West 104th Street Block Association, It's Easy Being Green, which is our local eco-friendly Let's Try and Be Greener group. We disseminated information about the Park Open Streets Initiative. We've spotlighted the creative talents of many neighbors, their exhibitions, their publications. We helped keep local businesses up and running and keep their lights on, because we know that's something of concern to everybody. We've introduced 3 of the candidates who are running for Danny O'Donnell's New York State Assembly seat. And that's just the newsletter alone. Thanks to Amy, my right hand on the newsletter, Ariana Kovitz, our designer, Terrence Hanrahan, who sells our advertisements, and Eliza Lansdale, who picks up 2,000 newsletters from Best Copy and Printing, and through a series of magic, makes it so it gets under every door. Other than the newsletter, we participated in beautification efforts, including tree cleanup in the springtime, planting in the springtime, both planting and mulching in the fall. Thanks to Eliza Lansdale, she's our planting person, and to Peter Frishoff, who's been very generous with sharing the open streets events to help make that happen easily for us. May 9th is the date of our spring planting. If you have any interest in helping to make the neighborhood more attractive, that's your moment. In addition, we've organized what I referred to before as very divisive, but our expectation was that ultimately it would be a mediation meeting having to do with the open streets that involved the group called the Peace Initiative. They mediated it. We lobbied for the sidewalk repair on 103rd Street. Took a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, a lot of 311 calls, a lot of reaching. It got done. We had someone speak at Cynthia's memorial service, our longtime chair. And following her death, we have successfully funded a bench sponsorship in Riverside Park. So perhaps in conjunction with the renaming, we'll do the bench dedication. At the memorial service, I wanted to say thank you again to Terrence for making those remarks. He served for many years as Cynthia's co-chair. I thought he did a bang-up job straddling the line between the kinds of things you should say at a memorial service and making it entertaining. The bench of the renaming, keep your eye on the newsletter. If you're not on our email list, sign up for the email list because there will be messages announcing when that will happen in the fall. What else did we do? We joined the Community Board 7's Cabinet of Block Associations. And through that, that's partially how the sidewalk repair happened. That's also part of how a change to the street sweeping schedule on Riverside Drive is about to be put into effect so that the upper portion of the territory actually gets swept. When for a long time, the street sweeper would run out of time to our south and never get up here. That's being fixed. Thanks to Amy, she's the one who attends those cabinet meetings monthly. In part because of Rich's contribution, we've moved another step into the digital age. And in addition to Zooming our meetings, which we figured out how to do because we had to during COVID, recordings of those meetings are now available on a YouTube channel. You can live stream the meetings through the YouTube channel. Those videos are available after the meetings. So if you couldn't attend, you can still see them. In addition, we hosted very well-attended Halloween party and Christmas caroling events. Hundreds of kids attend Halloween every year. And our thanks to Mary Gestaro-Haas, who organizes that for us and does a brilliant job. Anthony Bella, Bill Danderson, and Roberta Belulovich masterminded the caroling and engineered brand new caroling song sheets this year. So thanks to them. We've also been able to get the wheels moving for a spring fundraising event, which we haven't done since 2019, I believe. That will be June 15th. We need lots of help. So if you are in a position to lend a hand, there are all kinds of different jobs that can be done in advance. They can be done the day of, they can be done at the beginning, they can be done at the end, and we need the help. We have a new volunteer who's not here tonight, Sharia Barr, who stepped up and is in charge of that whole shebang. So thanks to her. And we also did something else that seems like a small thing, but it's actually a rather big thing. For many, many years, our monthly meeting took place in person at it's now called the Mount Sinai St. Luke's residential treatment facility on 102nd Street. Because of COVID, we stopped doing that. Recently, we started meeting in person again, and we're back in the facility. They're so happy to have us. We're so happy to be there. Once we started doing that, Ray Dooley, the manager of the facility, shared with me a letter that he had written in, I think it was 1971, talking about how eagerly the community welcomed the facility, how much it meant to the facility, how successfully the facility was working with the community. And he was one of the people who was championing the idea, come on back, let's do this in person again. And it was a great idea because we've been very efficient. So thanks to Ray Dooley, who's not here this evening, but it's a partnership that feels, that many of us feel very strongly about and very positive for that to be with. Tonight, here we are, and we are going to, we have accomplished one very important goal, which was giving Sean a chance to meet all of you and you a chance to meet him. I expect that a lot of productive change will come out of this meeting now that we know how to contact him and he knows that we care as much as we do. I'm excited to hear that the renaming of the street for Cynthia is something that he's involved in, because that's something that we're going to be able to achieve in the coming year. Tonight, we will add several additional people to our 50-year Hall of Fame. The total number is 45 people who we have identified in the neighborhood who have lived here for 50 years or more. Tonight, we expect to fill an important vacancy on our board. One of our treasurers is stepping down, and Ethan Stein has volunteered, if elected, to fulfill that role. So cross your fingers that he gets elected, because we really need a co-treasurer. On that note, I'd like to turn the floor over to Gary Mack, our other co-treasurer, who will speak about last year's financial report and the proposed budget for the coming year.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to throw a lot of detailed numbers into the course of doing this. Actually, I'm not a financial person. So it's always great to be paired with someone who isn't. Incoming chairman is elected, or co-treasurer will be, in fact, a great thing to have working with me. So, but let me give you a couple of headlines on it, and what I want to really spend more time on is, what are we going to do next? Because for this year, we have a project that we're actually looking forward, deciding what kind of new initiatives should we take, what kinds of things should we take on. And I want to share that with you today, and we'll share one of them, a great deal of working there. But last year, in 2023, we began the year with about $28,000 in the bank. That was money that was being accumulated because of the heavy costs of the guard that we were paying for. In the early part of last year, a decision was made that the guard was really not very cost effective. Someone spending 3 hours a night on walking on these blocks was not enormous, making enormous differences in terms of crime or other kinds of things in this area. And in fact, when we talked to some people who are in this business of mentioned, what they said is the two major crimes that are being committed in this area were, one, stealing stuff out of cars, and two, people who followed others into buildings and mugged them in those buildings, neither of which a person walking the streets was going to make a difference. So the decision was made at the beginning of last year not to continue the guard and to look for other ways that we could improve the security of the area. And so we actually ended last year with thanks to your generosity, with a surplus of about $14,000. And we began this year in January with about $42,000 in the bank. So what are we going to do with this? Gary,
do you want me to put the slides on?
Yeah, if you could, that would be great. Yeah. So.
All right, and I'm going to.
That's great. That's perfect. That was perfect, actually.
I want to share a screen with people online.
Okay. So there are 5 things that we'll continue to do that we think are very important. The quarterly newsletter is really our major way by which we communicate with each other about what people are doing in the neighborhood, activities are going on, etc. I read it from beginning to end, or read it from beginning to end before I joined the board. And I want to thank our editors for that newsletter, both Amy and Henny, who've been doing it for many years. And I hope you find it valuable, and we will continue to invest. Planting of the tree wells, which were quite successful last year. We're going to try to up the game by ordering more plants and finding a better way by which we can make sure that their water is kept up during the season on that. We're going to reinstitute the annual block party, which was one great outdoor event for everybody in the neighborhood. It'll be on June 15th. And it's now in the process of being planned, and I think that will be another contribution to the ways by which we come in contact with each other, meet each other, and enjoy things together. The Children's Halloween event will be continued. We're going to invest a little bit more money in it this time. The people that have been organizing have had to pinch and pull people to get involved in this, but we hope it'll be an equally good event as what it was last year. And the winter solstice caroling event will continue in the coming years. Those are existing things. The annual block party is being reinstituted after 4 years of absence, I guess, because of COVID and the other things. So new initiatives. We've decided that we're going to try to make a new and a really important difference to the quality of life on our streets by creating a weekly street cleaning and maintenance program for every one of the streets in the block area. And I'll ask Peter in a few minutes to tell us how we're going to do that. But we think, as we've talked with people in the neighborhood, the complaint that we get is that streets are getting dirty, a lot of stuff on them, moving their cars, so sweepers can't get into them, et cetera, et cetera. And we thought, if we can make a difference, this is something we should be doing as we're going to also try to initiate this year some discussions of important policy issues, where we invite everybody to come and have a debate and discussion on issues that are emerging, that are going to be making a difference in the future. For example, we know that there are initiatives going on in the garbage area, including initiatives to put large structures out on the streets to collect the garbage. What that does to the streetscape is another question. What that does to what people are throwing out and how they're throwing it out is another question. We should probably have a discussion about this in terms, not necessarily of what's happening tomorrow, but what's going to happen 2 years from now, 5 years from now, so we aren't stuck with things that we are surprised by. We're also going to get some consulting advice on security enhancements. If having people walking the streets is not the solution, what is the solution to making people feel more comfortable on the streets? And we're especially interested in getting some advice on whether security cameras that are already existing on the street, most of the buildings on the streets that we are here, could somehow be connected so that it would be possible to actually monitor what's happening on the streets in the area. We don't know what the technology is, et cetera, but we want to invest in a modest amount of money with consultants to find out what's the best way to think about doing it. We are also going to get liability insurance for the Block Association. We become increasingly worried about the number of events that we have, other kinds of things occurring on the streets, and our liability with those things. Not wildly expensive, but in fact, as an organization, we've reached the point where we really should be liability insurance for the activities we're doing. And then finally, we're going to do a series of things that are administrative and update our technology. So we've been putting stuff on the internet here and putting the newsletter on another site. We've been, every one of us, I have the treasurer's site with all of those materials on it. And we're gonna try to pull it all together to a single, onto a single site so that it's there. So it's, the things that are accessible to everybody can be reached very simply in that area. And we're gonna do other things that are also going to help. So what are the financial implications of those new things? They will draw down our current assets by about 10%, $10,000. Some of this is one-time investments that we're going to make, and they won't occur the year after that. For example, the consulting work on the security consultant on it. But our balance should, by the end of the year, remain at about 1.5 times our annual budget, which we like to keep in case of emergency, in case of things that we have to take on that we think is important. So I think we're in good health financially, and we now have the chance to actually make some real issues and begin to increase the activities and also increase the ways that we're contributing to the network. Peter, you want to talk about the big initiative that we want to take on?
Sure, you have those slides, Rick?
Just before you begin, I want to jump in. The new initiatives, I want to be very clear. We haven't made any hard and fast decisions as an organization. These are all projects we're interested in pursuing. Things that are costly, of course, we will make deliberate, sensible decisions, but they are all things that we are interested in exploring.
Good. Let's just give a moment for the slide to appear. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much, Gary. And I'm going to talk about a program that we discussed at the Block Association together with our local bid, the Columbus Avenue bid, and the Halfway House, which used to be called St. Luke's and is now Mount Sinai Halfway House for addiction research on 102nd, our longtime partners, in conjunction with volunteers from Park to Park 103. And the next slide, please. Basically, we are very aware, as was mentioned, that trash and cleanliness on the street is a problem. The traffic calmed streets include the streets east of us on 103rd Street, as you know, between Amsterdam Avenue and Broadway. And that is an area of concern as well that we and our partners would like to address. Next slide, please. So we all want the streets to be cleaner, and the redesign of the streets into a shared street has also resulted in some changes of habits, not altogether bad, but as we know from what Sean described, you know, the trash bags on the sidewalk are a problem, and creative building supers being what they are using actually the hugs, what the DOT call hugs, to avoid putting trash bags out on the sidewalk. And that's, you know, it's kind of like fire hydrants are the de facto loading zones. It's fine as long as there's a driver in the car that can move it if necessary. And this is not official city policy. It's just something that building supers, most of which are very responsible, you know, are using the space as they are, and most of them do a very good job leaving it tidy after the trash is picked up. But we want, you know, there has been residue left there the following days, and we want to make sure that the streets are clean and tidy, like the intersection of West End Avenue, which is shown the right is the picture. And by the way, I don't want to get into the open streets, but just a primary objective was to improve safety. There were almost 40 serious injuries happening at intersections between Amsterdam and Riverside Drive in a recent 10-year period. And as you can see from the picture on the right, part of the redesign objective was to shorten the crossing distances for walkers by half. So they're now vehicles can see around the corner, walkers and drivers can see each other. It's a much safer design. So the big objective of the DOT design was safety. And the art was done as a DOT public arts project in conjunction with neighborhood youth at MS 421 local public school as part of the DOT public arts program. The grant funded the kids who created this design, which was approved by DOT in terms of colors, and the materials were approved for slip resistance, etc. On below, we have been involved, volunteers from the open street, in doing some cleanup. That's one of our volunteers in the center, and the bid is part of their mission as well. So next slide, please. What we're hoping to do is have weekly cleanups and tree bed maintenance. So it's actually May 5th when the Block Association and the street arts, I think you said May 9th, heading, but it's actually Sunday, May 5th, when the spring planting is going to take place. And we've been doing this every year with the Block Association, and it's great. We have activities on the street, kids come out to plant the tree beds, but what's very, very difficult is to keep them all maintained. And people like Terrence, for example, he's out there, does his best, and Ira is another volunteer who does this. The Horticultural Society of New York does maintain the planters under a grant from DOT, and they'll be out on the street on Thursday doing their summer plantings, as well as our volunteers will be helping them. They maintain the planters, but not the tree beds. The tree beds, it's up to either buildings or volunteers or some other needs. And we really want to make sure that on 102nd and 103rd Street, all tree beds are maintained every single week. So the funding would go to the bid and the next slide, please. And the residents of the halfway house, and that's Ray Dooley there showing off our poster at the 102nd Street entrance. And the budget item that Gary has earmarked would go to pay for residents of the halfway house to work in this community cleanup effort. And it's a great program that we hope to do at 4:30 p.m. every Tuesday with a rain day Wednesday, and that makes it possible for many people who are after work and after school, kids to participate in a weekly cleanup as well. And we'll have staff and material from the bid and people from Park to Park 103, including our youth ambassadors who will be paid under the grant through the bid, and the bid staff to supervise the activity. So we're hoping that not only are we going to make all the tree beds beautiful on May 5th, like we do every year, but every single week, the streets get cleaned, the tree beds get maintained, and it'll really be a great enhancement for our community. So that's the idea.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay, and we will be publishing information on where people can meet up to join us on TFA. Yeah. confusion and
When spring planting. Is it May 4th, May 5th?
it's make it, Sunday, make it.
Okay. You need to make sure that everybody knows them. A lot of people.
Oh, yeah, it's coming out very shortly. Your neighbor Eliza is very much aware. He's a very much hands-on. Yes,
Anyone want to get vaccine, Michelle?
I was interested to hear your list of possible developments in our area. I was just wondering whether you were also asking for suggestions from the members.
We're entirely open to suggestions from the members.
Okay, I just have a suggestion which may or may not be possible now, but as former president of the Block Association on West 100th Street, which was only one street, we would collect funds years ago for what it evolved into was using the money collected to plant new trees, to buy trees. Now, I don't know if that's still possible, whether the city is now saying they have to provide them. But we used to be able to not only buy new trees, but to pay for Bartlett to come to do like a deep
The feeding and the pruning.
some sort of conditioning every couple times a year. So, anyway, someone had talked about the city not providing trees that they put in for them, but maybe we do that and see what it does.
I can shed a little bit of light. Like the tree beds, trees in the tree bed are officially the responsibility of New York City parks, as opposed to the planters, for example, that are maintained under the DOT contract with the Horticultural Society. But they don't do maintenance. So the maintenance, and you don't water the plants, they die. And many of, I would say, many of our tree beds are very well maintained by the buildings, and they want to do that. That's fine. But there are some very neglected tree beds as well that really should be addressed. It is possible to purchase a tree on your own, and there are buildings that have done that because you can apply to the city to have a dead tree replaced, but it would take years for that to happen. So there are methods, and it's actually changing. My understanding is that it's changing now, but you can still do that if there is funding for the tree and have an improved tree with other species. There are, because we have a sidewalk trees. This is all city property. You can't just go ahead and waste on the street. It has to be done for a particular. So it is still possible to get it done. The bid has a program and a relationship with city parks and the regulators, so that see a dead tree. And I know there's one on 2nd Street, waiting for replacement. Hopefully, through this relationship, we can have an impact.
Good idea, Michelle, thank you. Hang on, Maxine.
I'm thinking the difference between tree beds and tree wells.
Oh, it's the same thing.
Same.
The more contemporary,
But aren't they, but if they're all in front of buildings, didn't you say the tree wells are the responsibility of the building?
they
I'm
not officially, unofficially, yes. So the nomenclature, the preferred nomenclature has tree beds. They have been called tree wells and tree pits, but everybody seems to feel that but friendly, but it's the same thing. It's all the same.
My building keeps saying that they can't do planting because of the scaffolding. And the sun doesn't get there, and I don't think that's exactly true. I see a lot of buildings with scaffolding, with beautiful plantings.
Yeah.
And,
You gotta be a tough tree.
So the tree beds Sidewalks are the responsibility of the building. When there's snow, the building has to shovel. Tree beds are just there. The building has no responsibility to do anything about it, although most buildings do. In the history in the neighborhood, there have been several landlords who absolutely positively don't want the iron bars. Because even if somebody else pays for them, somebody falls and trips, it's the building responsibility.
Keeps the
Sometimes.
dogs out.
There are benefits, but because of the liability issues, there are some landlords who don't want to. So it's a very blurry line of.
On this, in front of this building, there's nothing, the tree beds. You should have started with that. You're sorry.
If Kevin, you were just touched on, sorry, my pet project for 5 years, which is tree gardens. Because it's great to keep replacing the trees that are developed, you know, and then, you know, everything else that happens to know about it. Without tree gardens, they tend not to last, because they have really wonderful suns.
Just before COVID, we had a board member who was very interested in beautification of tree wells, and we had all agreed at a board meeting to allocate a certain amount of money every year for repair and replacement and installation of tree garden wherever we could do it. But then it was COVID and he moved, and we just don't have a volunteer who's been willing to take that on. So should you know someone?
I do have someone, someone I know very closely who's retired, so you know, this is something but that what I was wondering is if this project that you have in the works might be a way to get the tree gardens that I'm discussing, the two beautiful trees that have somehow survived on Riverside Drive, just south of 105th Street. Great big tree pits, lots of space, but the soil is just all gone.
Well, we'll look to use your farm here.
Well, the question, that landlord is one of those, it's not even the.
Which I remember from the last one we had this
It's
conversation.
that building, we spent years trying to talk.
Right.
I'm wondering if there's a way around that one. And that's something that we've never been able to do. But, come this spring, yeah. I'll say.
If there are legal ways to get it done, we would be all in favor. The problem we ran into last time is we.
It's a gray area.
Right.
Always has been, but I think a project that has kind of been the monitor of the city might be helpful. So maybe there's a way to explore that.
Yeah.
Yes, I would say.
Thank
Thank you. Any other questions or comments or suggestions about our year ahead? Dilly?
Is this a good time to talk about the food trucks, or is it too soon?
Oh, thank you for reminding me. I completely forgot. This would be a great time. Okay. One of the two things that I neglected to include in my year in review, and then we're going to motor along because we have people who have been waiting patiently to be inducted into our Hall of Fame, and we don't want to make them wait any longer than the 50 years they've already Two things. One of the other initiatives we've been working on has been the revision of our bylaws. We are some of the way through, not all the way through in the next few months. Certainly by this time next year, we will have updated bylaws that we will share. Food trucks. There is an event coming up that we will be promoting in the newsletter, and we will be promoting via the email list. It is a combined project of the Business Improvement District and 104th Street and our block association and several other block associations. It is being called Bloomingdale Bites. Over at the youth hostel, local neighborhood restaurants are going to be bringing their food. People will pay a flat fee. They will go to the event. They will eat as much as they can possibly eat. Portions of the proceeds will go to the individual block associations that are participating in the event. So stay tuned for more information about that. It's on Thursday, June 6th. Thank you, Sylvia. All right, without further ado, our 50-year Hall of Fame people. The first one is not here. I don't know if she's streaming. Hello, Mimi, if you are.
We're down to 2.
Okay. So sometimes when I introduce our 50-year people, I'm struck by how much they have in common. And this year, when I did my interviews, I was struck by how they all wound up here in our little nook from very different sorts of places. Mimi Wallace, our first inductee, came to New York when she was a teenager because she wanted to dance. She lived in California and started performing when she was 10. She got her first job as Clara in the Nutcracker and was paid in silver dollars. And then she was hooked. By 13, she was dancing full time. And then when she finished high school, she wanted to come east. Her dance teacher in San Francisco had worked with George Balanchine. He made a call, she put in an application, and then she was enrolled at the American School of Ballet, the School of American Ballet, and moved here and became a full-fledged New Yorker. She studied with Martha Graham. She danced in 13 Broadway productions. While recovering from a back injury that prevented her from dancing, she performed on the NBC variety show Hullabaloo. She sang with a rock and roll band. She traveled the world with the USO. In addition, she spent 20 years spending considerable time in Westchester County, teaching dance at the Northern Westchester Center for the Arts in Mount Kisco. That institution folded in 2005, and she was faced with choices about what to do next, and wound up teaching dance and continues to teach dance, driving twice a week up to North Salem, New York, where she teaches a very dedicated group of dancers at Union Hall, which is a facility, a studio founded by dancer and choreographer Janice Roswick Mencken, who also happens to be the wife of composer Alan Mencken. When Mimi came to New York, she lived first at the Dauphin Hotel, which I never even heard of. It was where the Apple store in the West 60s now gleams. Then she migrated a little bit north to the West 80s in what she described as a sun-drenched apartment straight out of La Boheme. Had eaves, it had a river view. It was in a townhouse that somehow also had an elevator. After some time there, she moved up to 102nd Street in Riverside in the spring of 1973. Because she had 3 strikes against her when the building went co-op, and she described the strikes. 1, she was a dancer. 2, she was single. 3, she was female. There was no way she was getting a mortgage and couldn't buy her apartment. She says she's one of the remaining 2 renters in that building. In addition to dancing and teaching dance to others, Mimi is an avid reader. The New York Times, the New Yorker, and the Atlantic are her periodicals of choice. History is her preferred book genre. She still loves to attend performances, especially the Encore series at City Center, which is committed to giving a fresh take to old favorites. The Times Square Theater District, which she used to call home, regrettably no longer appeals. When I talked to Mimi about the differences and similarities in the neighborhood over the 50 years she has lived here, she echoed the thoughts of some of the other Hall of Fame inductees. The loss of so many of the mom and pop shops, which came up earlier when Shaw was speaking to us, especially the greengrocers and the newsstands, is a huge negative change. She misses getting to know the proprietors of the stores and recalls that the staff at Pearl's, the Chinese restaurant that used to be at 103rd and Broadway, knew her order and just hollered into the kitchen for the usual when she arrived. In addition to the loss of variety, she also feels the loss of the interpersonal contact she had with the shopkeepers and notices that there's somewhat of a decrease in that even in her building, because so often you get on the elevator and everybody's buried in their thoughts. The ubiquity of the sidewalk sheds is also a negative change if a necessary one. Mimi also enumerated a number of positive changes. Overall, she thinks the neighborhood looks better, and she thinks that there are more families in the neighborhood than ever. The availability of mulching, recycling, and composting, and the presence of produce and Christmas tree vendors on the street are also improvements. She said it used to be impossible to buy a Christmas tree in the neighborhood. She says the buses are way less smelly, way less crowded, and way quiet. Unchanged, she remarked, is the divide between the east and the west sides of Broadway. The openness of the community and the politics of the neighborhood are much as they were when she moved in 50 years ago, and that's a plus. And she admits that Sean was still here. The nearness of Zavar's is a wonderful constant as well. Meaning, when I spoke to her, identified an interesting aspect of our neighborhood that's both the similarity and the difference. And it's tricky to do that all at one time. She remembers that when she settled on the Upper West Side, you could walk up and down Broadway and there were always lots of other people, but many of them were European refugees. And she would hear all the different languages. She passed them on the street, she would listen, she would watch. As a dancer, she's interested in how people move. Now she notices there are people still strolling, plenty of them, but they're from very different points of origin. The way people move about is rather different than it was then. So if Mimi were here, I would say, please give her a round of applause. Let's do that in case she's watching. Mimi will receive, as all of her Mimi's do, a certificate suitable for framing. Her bio and photo in time will appear at our website with the other 44 Hall of Fame inductees. Next, in order of moving into the neighborhood, is Suzanne Timmermans. Suzanne didn't have to travel quite as far as Mimi did in order to land in the neighborhood. Instead of having to cross the country, she just had to cross the East River. And she had experience with that. As a kid, she would save up her allowance to buy a ticket on the Long Island Railroad, because who wants to be in the burbs when you can be here in the city? Once she graduated college, she was finally able to become a New York City resident, thanks to a fellowship in anthropology at Columbia. When she was accepted, she walked downtown from the campus until she identified a block she felt safe on. How do you know if you feel safe on a block? There was a motorcycle parked downstairs chained to a post, and she figured if it was safe to leave your motorcycle, safe enough for her. That was on 102nd Street between West End and Riverside. And she described it as a big studio with the world's tiniest bathroom and a large colony of cockroaches. Fast forward a year or so, and the studio suddenly became too small when she unexpectedly fell in love with, met and moved in with, but I shouldn't say moved in with, she was dating, and unexpectedly her beau moved in and stayed. And they have been married all this time. The studio became too small for two people, even two people who were very fond of one another. And like most people, when looking for a new apartment, she found out about somebody who was looking for somebody to take over a lease. And even more fortunately than finding someone who was looking for a person to take over a lease, her boyfriend at the time, who is here tonight with us as well, was friendly with the landlord of the building and was able to get their application for that space to the top of the pile. She described it as a one-bedroom that still smelled of the previous deceased occupant, and it became theirs for $135 a month. It even had a terrace, that it was an unusable terrace. Because the back of the Alexandria, just down the block 250, which at the time was a terrible squatter, swallowed, infested place, overlooked the terrace, and it just wasn't safe or pleasant to be out there. So once the Alexandria was improved, then it was possible for the terrace to be used too. After half-heartedly trying to retire several times in recent years, 2 years ago, Suzanne made good on a threat and gave up what had been a long career working in a variety of capacities with people with developmental disabilities. She worked in a number of private agencies, including United Cerebral Palsy, AHRC, PSCH, and IAC. And I actually looked up all those alphabets to try to give you what they stand for, and learned that what they originally stood for is no longer, I'll say, politically correct. So they go by their acronyms, and that is now their names. She's traveled all around the city as a special education teacher who had a fondness for taking students on field trips. As an administrator, a public speaker, a software coder, and a pioneer in the implementation of electronic health records. She hated working via Zoom during the pandemic and was the first one back in the office once it reopened. Post-retirement, she expected to find herself busy with volunteer work, but has found it a challenge to successfully connect with an organization. Wasn't hard to connect with us, was it, Susan? Meanwhile, she enjoys wandering about with camera in hand, thoroughly exploring a subject, whether water towers or birds or delivery bicycles, as examples before tackling another. She maintains memberships at MoMA and the Met, takes exercise classes, enjoys visits with her grandchildren, and admits to a fondness for binge watching Korean series. Like Mimi, she enjoys reading history, although it perplexes her that we haven't yet figured out how to avoid the violence of war. On the topic of how the neighborhood has changed and how it has remained the same, Suzanne noted that there are more options for grocery shopping than there used to be, which is interesting because I've heard so many people complain about the lack of nearby markets. She also observed that when she and her husband first moved into their building, it's one of the townhouses on the east side of West End, repairs were done as needed by trained tradesmen. Now it's a jack of all trades handyman or super who comes in to address whatever the problem is. The number of empty storefronts concerns her, as does the increase in people sleeping on the streets. And don't get her started on the increasing number of ugly glass towers replacing older buildings with character. I wish Sean was still here because we talked about something that I was hoping he might have an ability to help with. The lack of accessibility of the West 104th Street Post Office has vexed her for as long as she can remember. The West, and it continues to be a problem, and because it's a federal building rather than a locally administered building, it seems to be a big challenge to try to affect change there. The West End Avenue streetscape is also unchanged. On the other, more uplifting hand, she finds the feeling of community in the neighborhood wonderfully the same. People still say hello and smile as they walk along Broadway, as they always have. Thank you, Suzanne, for being part of our neighborhood. Last but certainly not least, we have Jesse Ehrman and Paula Dorval. Did I pronounce that correctly? Close enough. Like Suzanne, Jesse lived elsewhere in the neighborhood before settling into the apartment that ultimately became a home for him and his wife and their family. Also, like Suzanne, his migration to the neighborhood was prompted by grad school enrollment at Columbia. Looking for a place to live, he and another Columbia grad student, along with 2 Barnard students, connected with a Barnard professor who wanted to sublet his 9-room apartment at 305 Riverside Drive, complete with Riverview, right?
Yeah.
Coincidentally, that professor, Peter Juveler, is also a member of our Hall of Fame. He was one of our early inductees in 2013. When the sublet was over, Jesse and his classmate took a walk around the neighborhood to find themselves a new apartment. In September of 1974, they moved into one of the big buildings on West End Avenue. A few years later, Jesse and Paula met. She was living on the Upper East Side. And they decided to spend their life together and get married. I guess your roommate, I didn't ask you this. How did you wind up with the apartment? I guess the roommate got the short straw.
No, I was the one that was left, because everybody left.
Oh, I thought you had to. Jesse is a Brooklyn native and spoke proudly of his father, who was a New York City firefighter. Paula comes from 6 generations of Brooklynites on her mother's side. Her father was a German immigrant with an abundance of musical talent who played the piano, the accordion, and the harmonica. Jesse spent 41 years working as a legal aid society social worker. And because that wasn't enough, he then took a job with the criminal division of the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. He's now retired. Paula spent 31 years working in early childhood education at Columbia Greenhouse Preschool and is now also retired. Jesse is an avid athlete. He's run 17 marathons. New York marathons. I shouldn't have mentioned anything I say that's incorrect. Please do correct me because I want to be accurate. Oh, I'm sorry. What was that? Okay. What was that?
I was head social work for the society, criminal division.
Oh, okay. Criminal division of the Legal Aid Society. Got it.
And when I was 17 New York Marathon, I was actually 32.
Keep the corrections coming. I want to be accurate. Ira, you'll be happy to know he's swum across the Hudson. Yes.
Oh, yes, well.
And he completed an Ironman, two Ironman competitions, one of them when you were 16.
59.
He still runs daily, spends a lot of time in Riverside Park walking the dog, and has discovered a love of houseplants. He's in it. Paula loves cultural and creative activities, and also has a collection of pencil sharpeners that is so vast that it should be in the Guinness Book of World Records. Jesse and Paula raised their 2 daughters on West End Avenue and are pleased that both have remained local. One lives in the West 90s, the other is right around the corner on West 103rd Street. The birth of their 2nd grandchild very recently may prevent their daughter's family from sticking around in the neighborhood long enough to become Hall of Fame inductees. But meanwhile, Jesse and Paula are happy that they only have to run around the corner in order to lend a hand. Both of them consider themselves very fortunate to live here, away from the tumult of the West Side in the 70s and 80s. Jesse admits that early on he imagined he'd wind up in Northampton, Massachusetts, but now can't imagine living anywhere else. Paula harbors a not so secret fantasy about spending part of each year somewhere warm and pleasant, maybe in Europe, maybe Barcelona, you never know. Like our other 2 inductees, Jesse and Paula identify the liberal attitude of the neighborhood as unchanged since they moved in. Jesse told me our zip code, I never knew this, continues to be one of the most liberal in the country, which is important to them both. And the longevity of V&Ts is a constant in the neighborhood that they're much attached to.
It was the only zip code that carried the dog.
The only zip code that carried them protected.
Exactly on the west side.
The longevity of V&Ts is important to them because they ate there the day they got married, and Paula went into labor there once. Thinking about the space constraints that their daughter's growing family face, they acknowledge that it is now very difficult for a young family to move into the neighborhood. Although they too feel the loss of the small shops on Broadway, they're grateful that big box stores haven't filled the void. On the topic of grocery stores, they recall having used them as a source of air conditioning before they could afford to have one of their own. Remembering that 2 of their cars were stolen from right in front of their building, as well as a car seat stolen from a car in front of the building, they also identify the increase in neighborhood safety as a positive change. Please welcome Jesse and Paula into.
I moved to Hattie, I met about 3 weeks ago, first time. And we had a delightful flower in my phone. And I just want to say that, she exemplifies politics, which I think is incredible. Up here, that. Well, 50 years later, I'm still here. I'm living. Had a family, both my daughters are still here, I just can't do it. One thing that has said, one is when I'm on this, the God bonds and American. We are so thrilled. We're so thrilled that our daughters are still in the neighborhood, we get to see them all the time. We're incredible things with all parents, be able to see their children. We just had our second grandchild right around the corner. Another wonderful event. I can't tell you that, as Hannah mentioned, after I finished graduate school here in Columbia, I was on my way up to Massachusetts, because it's an academic community with a lot of and I thought that was a great place for me. Thank goodness. This is the best place anywhere. Ever was. Literally, philosophically, in every way, every imagine concept. This is the place. We love it here, and we are thrilled to be around all of you, and we love everyone. Thanks.
You'll be contacted individually by the power, but the voting has to have moments. What should we have following this? 50 years. I have not met before.
No.
Are we going to get familiar? Stations for here. Checking on. Okay. Thank you, Peter. Thank you all. We have one more order of business on our agenda. And I must admit, blowing it. I had printed up our slate of nominees for the board of directors. Where that piece of paper has gone to, I don't know. You have little cards that you can hold up when it is time to vote. We're going to go to Plan B. If you are an existing director of the Block Association, please stand up. In addition to those of us who you can see standing, Mary Chester-Acoss is running for re-election, and we have a candidate who has not before been a board member, Ethan Stein, who is running for election. Usually what we do is we present the slate as an entirety, and we ask for our voters to either vote for or against the slate in its entirety. By acclamation, is that the terminology? Acclamation. Thank you, Celia. So somebody should make a motion, I think, or do we just vote? This is the part I don't think. We just vote. So all those in favor of electing this group of directors, plus Ethan and including Mary, who I think may be on Zoom, or you two, please raise your placard. All right, we count from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Are there any opposed? And not to the whole slate. Awesome.
Making it all or nothing.
We are.
I think there's been a lot of controversy.
I agree. It's true.
Should we be voting as well?
Yes.
Sure. So. Thank you, Rich. Board members, please raise your hands in favor of the slate. Adding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Any opposed? Is Mary Zooming or YouTubing?
We've lost everyone.
She was a little, she, I guess, is an abstention. I said 7. Okay, so the slate of directors, which I apologize for not having actually printed as I thought I had, has been elected. Ethan, thank you for joining us. I think you'll find it gratifying here. Before we adjourn, if there are any other questions, comments, concerns, now's the time. Susan?
I know that everybody doesn't agree with everything, but I would like to just have a very thank you all for all the time you've been on the election.
Well, thank you for saying. You're welcome.
And a special thank you for Hetty for stepping up and leading us.
Thank you, Kate.
I have a motion to adjourn.
Yes, please return the cards for going to reuse that. You what?
I have a motion to adjourn.
Second. Is there anybody opposed to adjourning the meeting? No. No.